Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Spicy Coach Jade, and today we are going to be coaching Romantic Killer. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Vámonos! Romantic Killer stars a high schooler named Ansu Hoshino, who is forced into a literal dating simulation after a wizard removes her favorite things in life: chocolate, her cat, and video games, until she falls in love. Just to give you a tiny bit more context, these things are removed out of her life because she finds fulfillment in all of it. She doesn't really care about finding a real relationship or having real connections. And hence, this wizard is brought forth by some force to kind of help her connect with others. Not to say she doesn't have friends. She does have a friend, a best friend, but that's kind of where it stops. She's very oblivious to things around her, and especially when it comes to, well, boys. And because of this, our main chica, Anzu, starts to connect and befriend some young men in her life. I don't want to talk about Anzu actually, but about one of those young men. I want to talk about Tsukasa Kazuki. I will be calling him both names because he's called both names in the show, so I hope you don't get too confused. And his challenges in the show when it comes to his situation in his personal life, because Anzu's not the only one that has issues. Everybody kind of has their own issues. I mean, it's the same thing in reality. Everybody just kind of has their own issues. So, we see in the first episode that Kazuki is perceived as cold to female admirers. He even comes across as irritable. By episode 3, we get to see the extent to his discomfort and exhaustion when it comes to aggressively forward females showing interest in him. We learn how comfortable he becomes with Anzu once he realizes her priorities are elsewhere and not solely on dating him. In episode 6, Kazuki's boss asks if he would start working front of house instead of just being a cook in the back, saying customers would just love you. This makes Kazuki visibly uneasy, and he turns it down firmly but politely. As he walks home from work, a female coworker catches up with him and tries to make conversation with Kazuki. As soon as she takes it upon herself to grab his arm right after suggesting getting a bite to eat together, he pulls away, declines, and wishes her a good night. And we really get to see Tsukasa at a vulnerable moment later in that episode when he and Anzu go shopping at the mall together. After some shopping, Anzu excuses herself to go to the restroom. And as he is waiting for her, he notices a few ladies taking notice of him. Tsukasa starts to spiral into what seems like some kind of panic attack. As the girls make their way to Tsukasa, he has flashbacks of a female repeatedly saying his name and flashes of what look like packaged clothes and a hand-to-hand exchange of some kind of bag. His heart can be heard pounding, his breath gets heavy, and he begins to sweat while his posture starts to contort to discomfort, to some kind of threat. Once back at Anzu's house, after shopping, Kazuki makes a comment to himself saying he might be the one actually being saved, telling us there is more to learn about Kazuki's situation than meets the eye. In episode 8, when Tsukasa's sister comes in for a visit, she lets it be known to Anzu that Kazuki is a different person than he used to be due to an incident in his middle school years. After her visit, Kazuki almost tells Anzu the story behind what his sister had disclosed to her, but changes his mind and lets Anzu know he will be telling her later. As the audience, we can already guess that this is a very traumatic event, probably caused by a girl that had romantic interest in Kazuki. We just don't know the details yet. It isn't until episode 10 that Saki has a small conversation with Tsukasa about being in a similar situation, and a piece of Saki's past is shown about her issues with her attractiveness catching unwanted attention. This gives us a bit of a confirmation about our suspicions cahoots with Tsukasa's traumatic past. At the very last minute of the episode, we witness a young lady scrolling on her PC, spotting a photo of two girls at a festival with a tiny Tsukasa in the background, which she follows up with, "There you are. I found you, Tsukasa, my love." Episode 11 finally reveals the truth behind Tsukasa's situation. First, the young woman we saw on the PC in episode 10 finds Anzu introduces herself as Yukana, Kazuki's girlfriend, who everyone seems to be against their relationship for some reason. Okay, mentirosa. In fact, Yukana even claims Kazuki's sister is a mean person, which Anzu and the audience know is absolutely not true. No es cierto, okay? Luckily, our main girl gets a strange feeling telling her something isn't right about Yukana and what she says. While Yukana is talking to Anzu, Kazuki walks around the corner to see both the girls, and he stares in absolute shock. Yukana starts towards Kazuki, but just in time, Anzu steps in between the two, stopping Yukana from invading Kazuki's space. Once Anzu and Kazuki step into the safety of Anzu's home, she notices Kazuki's uncomfortable body language, his heavy breathing, and his profuse sweating. After a moment, Tsukasa asks Anzu what Yukana said to her. She lets him know that Yukana said she was his girlfriend. As soon as she tells him that information, he holds his mouth with disgust and runs to the sink to throw up. It is finally then Tsukasa admits to Anzu that Yukana is actually a stalker. Kazuki tells the story of when he was in middle school, that while walking with a couple of his friends, a young Yukana tripped and fell. He helped her with her bag. After that moment, Yukana had made an effort to bump into Kazuki and say good morning. Shortly after that, Yukana started to send gifts of clothing straight to Tsukasa's family home, where it became a point of tension as someone was making multiple accounts in Tsukasa's mother's name, buying and sending clothes for Kazuki to the family home. Tsukasa's father started to believe it was Tsukasa himself. That is until Yukana finds Tsukasa in public and tells him it was all her. He does beg her to stop, but it all falls on deaf ears. Yukana continues to stalk him from a distance, furthering Tsukasa's paranoia. One day, while studying and drinking a bottle of tea, Tsukasa starts to feel the effects of blurred vision and a lack of control over his own body. Tsukasa falls unconscious onto his bed just in time, and like clockwork, Yukana has found her way into his family home, right into his room, speaking delusional thoughts she feels are the truth, that Kazuki doesn't want anyone to know about them together. But at least she still gets to see him every day. Then she continues to cuddle with his unconscious body in his bed and takes pictures of them together, then posts them to his and her own online accounts, I would say similar to like Instagram, claiming how Tsukasa is into mature girls now and sending the message that they are a couple. Unfortunately, after that horrific happening, Tsukasa's dad hits him across the face, blaming him for leading Yukana on, making her creepy and unwanted behavior his fault. First off, this just makes the trauma even worse. Having people not believe you or even blaming you for being the target of someone else's unhealthy obsession is very damaging to the person who is being stalked. It can make a person feel unsafe, lead to self-blaming, and trust issues with everyone around them, making it difficult to build future relationships, which is all issues we had seen Tsukasa display in the show so far. One day, while walking, Kazuki's sister steps into defend her brother from his stalker. However, despite the restraining order and his sister and mother's support, the pressure of the situation all became too great for Tsukasa to function normally. This then all led to him moving all on his own to start anew and find a way to live outside the creeping shadow of his stalker. But as we all saw, the impact of that traumatic situation continued to affect him in his daily life. After all, she was still out there and she was looking for him, and he knew she would do that. So there was always that in the back of his head. Now that we know Tsukasa's story, we can start to dive into the topic of stalking and how it can affect a person. According to stalkingawareness.org, an estimated 13.5 million people are stalked in a 1-year period in the United States alone. I'm not too sure about Japan's statistics, but I'm sure they're somewhat similar. They're up there with the help of technology and everything. It's easier. It's easier to get stalked. And we all heard like, oh, I'm stalking this person, like cyber stalking. Well, there you go. The vast majority of stalking victims are stalked by someone they know. 40% by a current or former intimate partner, 42% by an acquaintance, and that means the remaining 18% are stalked by people they don't know exist. Now you can see why Tsukasa would react so coldly to female admirers. Stalkers use many tactics, including making unwanted phone calls, approaching the victim, or showing up in places when the victim does not want them to, following and watching the victim, sending unwanted text messages, photos, emails, and other messages through social media, sending unwanted gifts, using technology to monitor, track, or spy on them. We saw Yukana use most of these tactics on Kazuki, which started to snowball the stress in his personal life. Let's talk about the impact of stalking on victims, because there is. 46% of stalking victims fear not knowing what will happen next. 29% of stalking victims fear it will never stop. 1 in 8 employed stalking victims lose time from work as a result of their victimization, and more than half lose 5 days or more of work. People need to work. It's not easy out there. 1 in 7 stalking victims move as a result of their victimization, like Tsukasa did. Stalking victims suffer much higher rates of depression, anxiety, insomnia, and social dysfunction than people in the general population. We never saw Tsukasa miss any days of work when he was first getting stalked in middle school. We did witness all the other impacts listed take a toll on Tsukasa's life, mentally, emotionally, and physically. In fact, 25% of stalking victims report feeling sick as a result of their victimization. Compared to those with no history of stalking victimization, stalking victims are more likely to report the following negative health conditions: frequent headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, sleeping difficulties, chronic pain, asthma, blindness, and serious vision issues. If I remember, there was a couple of these displayed by Kazuki, like the headaches and the vision issues due to the stress of the stalking. Mental health impacts of stalking. 92% of stalking victims report 1 or more psychological impacts from their victimization. Compared to the general population, victims of stalking experience significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, difficulty managing emotions, flashbacks and or intrusive thoughts, panic attacks, post-traumatic disorder, social dysfunction, conditions or behaviors that hinder an individual or a group's ability to function within a society, leading to disruptions in social structures, relationships, and overall social stability. Somatization, which is the process of expressing psychological distress through physical symptoms or physical symptoms that are not medically explained. Think of the broken heart syndrome, where somebody's heart starts to fail after a particularly stressful event happening in their life. Substance misuse and abuse. This was not indicated on the show. Self-unaliving ideations. Again, this was not brought up in the show, but we can all use our imagination and say it was probably in the back of his mind in the height of the stalking. I know it would be for me. Especially when you're blaming yourself for all this, and then other people are blaming you for all this, and you're like, well, I might as well just not exist, right? Then your imagination goes there. So why did I want to talk about this character and their stalking issues specifically? Because it really did intrigue me how Tsukasa was from beginning to end of the season, and the many issues he had to face and overcome while trying to protect himself and his newfound friends. He did all this while trying to find some way to heal from the trauma he endured while still trying to live a normal life as a teen with a dangerous stalker still on the loose. That cannot be easy. And although this is an anime and not at all a real case, it is a very real situation that anyone can find themselves in. It could last days, months, or even years. I would like to bring up a case that was recently made into a docu-series called Stalking Samantha, 13 Years of Terror, where her stalker Christopher Thomas did indeed take an obsessive liking to Samantha and began aggressively pursuing her despite her boundaries being made clear and her feelings being voiced. Christopher continued his pursuit in the form of stalking. Today, I'm not sure what Samantha's relationship status is. That's none of my business, but I am sure we can understand that she may always have a voice in the back of her mind telling her to be cautious when meeting new people. It's a lot of unnecessary stress on somebody. Relationships and building relationships is very important for a person's mental health and physical health. In Romantic Killer, we can see that expressed by Tsukasa with his actions and thoughts. Try not to be too friendly, especially with girls. Keeping his eyes forward, always having a sense of focus to him when he's out in public. And of course, his expressions of discomfort when even being looked at by a female. With 13.5 million Americans per year becoming victims of stalking, that is a lot of trust issues that need to be worked out. Just imagine the trust issues you would have if none of your friends believed you, like Tsukasa, or even if your own father blamed you for the stalking and the violation of your own body, when all you were trying to do was be kind to someone who took that as a green light to claim you and everything you do as theirs. Ugh, it's just stressing me out already just thinking about it. Luckily in the show, Kazuki builds a tight network of supportive people that do believe him. At the end of the season, Anzu finds herself being targeted by the jealous stalker. Everyone bands together to not just protect Anzu, but to protect Kazuki as well. And yes, stalkers can and do stalk the loved ones of their victims too, just to make sure they know where their target is and what they're up to. This can be very dangerous for future potential love interests, especially if the stalker is still free, causing the victim to probably swear off any romantic or even platonic relationships to keep others safe, creating a feeling of self-blame on the victim, leading to a very lonely and isolating lifestyle. Unfortunately, being believed is only half the battle. The other half is getting the justice system to take some serious actions to protect the victim against their stalker. One issue can be that victims, as well as law enforcement and prosecutors, may focus on discrete stalking actions rather than perceiving those incidences as part of a larger pattern of stalking behavior. Another is when stalking is the primary crime, presenting evidence of a motive may be particularly important because jurors often have difficulty making a verdict to cases they do not understand. Usually when stalking is related to another crime, the motive will be more obvious. When the stalking appears to have occurred at random, however, jurors may believe an absence of motive equals reasonable doubt. And though there are things to protect the victim like restraining orders, police reports, those can only do so much. A restraining order always has a time limit, and some stalkers will be counting down the days until it is up, while others might find another person to obsess over. Now, let's think about the stalker themselves and just how lonely they must be by constantly obsessing over one person, spending their waking moment living in a limerence. And a limerence is like a fantasy world that you're thinking about a person romantically, but aren't able to take it to real life. This causes a distress to their target. there's more forms of stalking out of pure jealousy, like a current or past abusive partner, stalking because you're trying to get witnesses to feel intimidated in some way and keep their mouths shut, stalking out of pure romantic idolization. Think about musicians or movie stars or any other celebrity who's been stalked by a person they've never met before. But yet there are people that feel like they are meant to be together. It happens to regular people as well. I digress. So, a stalker who stalks out of pure romantic idealization of another person would most likely not give any other relationship opportunities a chance to develop on a deeper level, trapping themselves in a situation where they believe their victim will be the only one that can understand them and no one else possibly could. That thought alone reflects a deep feeling of loneliness that already exists within the stalker, probably due to a sense of loneliness imprinted on them while developing during childhood. So, final thoughts. My final thoughts are, of course, in this show, it's an anime. I think it's going to end on a light note, especially for Tsukasa. But in reality, this is a very intense and scary situation. Again, some of these victims feel like it'll never end. You know, in Tsukasa's case in this anime, he did feel that way. She was out and loose and still looking for him, and she did find him. I know at the end she got her memory erased, but she gets little wizards, so I don't know what's gonna happen there. I'm excited to see season 2, so I'm gonna talk about that. But again, on a serious note, it seems like it's really taken a toll on Tsukasa, and I can only imagine what kind of a toll it really takes on somebody in real life. Anyways, that's all I have for today. I like to apologize about the mess in the background. I got boxes over there and stuff. We're about to move, so I apologize. My bad. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your support, and comment down below if I missed anything or if you have any input about this episode or Tsukasa and his situation with Yukana. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.